The Maginot Line represents perhaps history's most extensively discussed example of static defense. Failure, despite near-perfect tactical performance. Constructed between 1930 and 1940 under the supervision of the Commission d'Organisation des Regions, fortifies Corfe. This fortification system extended along France's borders with Germany, Luxembourg, and Italy. The line's name derives from André Maginot, French Minister of War from 1929 to 1932, who championed the project. France's strategic situation following World War I created the rationale for massive fortification investment. The Treaty of Versailles demilitarized the Rhineland, but did not eliminate Germany as a potential threat. France's population of approximately 39 million in 1930 compared unfavorably with Germany's 65 million, creating long-term concerns about mobilization capacity. French military planners calculated that population disparities would translate into numerical disadvantages in any future conflict. Additionally, World War I's carnage France suffered approximately 1.4 million military deaths, created political pressure to minimize casualties in future conflicts. The fortification system's engineering specifications exceeded anything previously constructed. Major fortifications, designated ouvrages, consisted of interconnected underground facilities housing garrisons ranging from 200 to 1,000 personnel. These complexes featured concrete protection up to 3.5 meters thick, designed to withstand direct hits from 420 millimeters artillery, the heaviest siege guns then in service. According to Corfe engineering documents, approximately 1.5 million cubic meters of concrete were poured during construction. Underground infrastructure included more than 100 kilometers of tunnels connecting combat positions, barracks, magazines, power generation facilities, and command posts. Ventilation systems maintained breathable air during gas attacks. Narrow-gauge railways transported ammunition and supplies between positions. Medical facilities provided surgical capability underground. Some larger ouvrages featured their own power plants, water purification systems, and food storage sufficient for 3-month sieges. Armament varied by fortification size. Major ouvrages mounted turret-mounted artillery ranging from 75 mm to 135 mm, guns in retractable or rotating armored housings. Machine gun casemates provided anti-personnel fire. Anti-tank guns covered approach routes. Fire control systems coordinated artillery to cover dead zones between fortifications. Smaller positions, blockhouses, and bunkers held single or multiple machine gun teams with interlocking fields of fire. The tactical deployment followed defense-in-depth principles documented in French military doctrine. Forward observation posts detected enemy movements. Light defenses channeled attackers toward prepared killing zones. Major fortifications provided concentrated firepower to destroy enemy forces caught in these zones. Reserve positions behind the primary line offered fallback positions if forward defenses were penetrated, though planners never seriously expected such penetration to occur. Financial costs were substantial. Declassified French Ministry of Finance records indicate total expenditure exceeded 6 billion francs in period currency, equivalent to approximately $9 billion in contemporary purchasing power when adjusted for inflation and exchange rates. This represented one of the Third Republic's largest infrastructure investments during the 1930s. The Maginot Line's tactical performance was flawless. German forces never successfully assaulted any major fortification through direct attack. When German operations commenced in May 1940, Wehrmacht units bypassed the line entirely, advancing through Belgium and the Ardennes forest. The few German probing attacks against Maginot positions in June 1940 were repulsed with heavy German casualties and minimal French losses. Individual fortifications that engaged German forces inflicted casualty ratios exceeding 10-1 in France's favor. However, strategic failure was complete. The fortifications' very existence shaped French military doctrine in counterproductive ways. The French High Command allocated substantial forces to garrison positions that never saw significant combat. These troops, estimated at 400,000 personnel in May 1940, occupied static positions, while mobile German forces executed maneuver warfare in Belgium and northern France. The Maginot mentality, described by post-war analysts, referred to psychological dependence on fixed defenses that reduced emphasis on mobile operations and offensive spirit. The line's incomplete coverage created its most critical vulnerability. Financial and diplomatic considerations prevented extending fortifications along the Belgian border. France's alliance with Belgium made such construction politically difficult. Belgium viewed defensive fortifications on its border as abandonment. Additionally, extending the line's engineering standards to the Belgian frontier would have doubled or tripled costs. French planners assumed the Ardennes forest's terrain made it unsuitable for large-scale armor operations. This assumption proved catastrophically wrong. German panzer divisions traversed the Ardennes between May 10th to 13th, 1940, emerging at Sedan behind the Maginot Line's northern terminus. The subsequent collapse of French defensive positions in Belgium and northern France made the Maginot Line strategically irrelevant. By June 1940, German forces had bypassed it entirely, and fortification garrisons surrendered only after France's general capitulation. Chapter 2: British Fortress Singapore Malaya, Defense 1923 to 1942. Fortress Singapore represented the British Empire's largest defensive investment in Asia. Intended to secure sea routes to Australia and India while providing a base for Royal Navy operations. Construction commenced in 1923 following the Washington Naval Treaty, which limited capital ship construction and made fixed fortifications an alternative to maintaining large fleets throughout the empire. The fortification system centered on Singapore Island's coastal defenses. By December 1941, 29 major coastal artillery pieces were operational, ranging from 6-inch to 15-inch guns. The largest weapons 15-inch guns at Johor Battery and Boon Vista Battery could engage targets at ranges exceeding 30 kilometers. These weapons, derived from naval surplus, removed from decommissioned battleships, and installed in concrete emplacements, according to declassified ordnance records. Ammunition stocks in December 1941 totaled approximately 1,500 rounds per gun for smaller weapons and 300 rounds per gun for the 15-inch batteries. Fire control systems employed optical rangefinders and mechanical calculating devices to compute firing solutions. Forward observation posts connected to battery positions via telephone lines. The system could coordinate fire from multiple batteries against single targets, concentrating fire against approaching naval forces. In peacetime exercises, batteries demonstrated capability to achieve hits on moving targets at maximum range. The fortifications design incorporated several advanced features. Fort Canning housed the command center with communications facilities linking to observation posts throughout the island. Underground magazines protected ammunition from Japanese air attack. Personnel accommodations, water storage, and power generation facilities allowed sustained operations during siege conditions. Coastal batteries were protected by concrete casemates with overhead cover against aerial bombardment. However, the entire system suffered from a fundamental design flaw. It oriented exclusively seaward. British planners assumed Singapore faced threats primarily from Japanese naval forces approaching from the South China Sea. The Malayan Peninsula's jungle terrain was considered impassable for large-scale ground forces, particularly mechanized units. This assumption shaped fortification planning from initial design through final construction. The landward northern approaches received minimal fortification investment. Singapore Island's northern coast, facing the Johor Strait, lacked concrete fortifications, extensive minefields, or prepared defensive positions. Some field fortifications were constructed in late 1941, but these consisted primarily of trenches and wire obstacles rather than permanent concrete structures. Artillery coverage of northern approaches was limited, and few batteries maintained adequate stocks of high-explosive shells. Most ammunition was armor-piercing, rounds intended for naval targets. A persistent myth claims Singapore's guns could not traverse to fire landward. Declassified ordnance reports refute this. Most coastal batteries possessed traversing mechanisms, allowing fire in multiple directions. And several batteries did engage Japanese forces crossing the Johor Strait in February 1942. However, ammunition shortages of high-explosive shells suitable for land targets limited effective fire support. Armor-piercing naval ammunition was largely ineffective against land targets. The Japanese invasion validated worst-case scenarios British planners had dismissed. Lieutenant General Tomoyuki Yamashita's 25th Army landed in northern Malaya on December 8, 1941. Japanese forces advanced southward through supposedly impassable jungle terrain, utilizing bicycles for rapid movement and conducting aggressive outflanking maneuvers that repeatedly forced British and Commonwealth forces to withdraw from prepared positions. British, Australian, and Indian forces defending Malaya numbered approximately 85,000 combat personnel by January 1942. Japanese strength totaled approximately 30,000 effectives, less than half the defender strength. Despite numerical superiority, Allied forces suffered from dispersed deployment, inadequate air support after Japanese forces destroyed air bases in northern Malaya, and command confusion as senior officers struggled to adapt to Japanese tactics. By January 31, 1942, British forces had withdrawn to Singapore Island. Japanese forces completed preparations for assault across the Johor Strait on February 8th to 9th, 1942. The invasion achieved tactical surprise. Japanese units landed on northwestern shorelines that British commanders considered unlikely invasion points. Within days, Japanese forces secured footholds and advanced toward the city center. Fortress Singapore surrendered on February 15, 1942, after 8 days of fighting on the island itself. Lieutenant General Arthur Percival cited water supply contamination, civilian casualties, and inability to mount effective counterattacks as factors in his surrender decision. Approximately 80,000 British, Australian, Indian, and local forces entered captivity, the largest surrender in British military history. The strategic failure was comprehensive. Fortress Singapore consumed substantial resources over nearly 2 decades of construction. Financial costs included not only construction expenditures, but also ongoing maintenance, garrison salaries, and ammunition storage. The Sultan of Johor contributed significant funds toward construction, viewing the fortress as protection for his state. Yet the entire system failed to prevent Japanese conquest in a campaign lasting barely 70 days from initial landings to surrender. Post-war analysis identified multiple failure factors beyond inadequate northern defenses. Air defense proved insufficient against Japanese bombardment. Water and fuel reserves were vulnerable to Japanese artillery fire. Civil defense preparations were inadequate, leading to civilian casualties that pressured military commanders. Most fundamentally, the entire strategic concept assumed naval forces would relieve Singapore before ground defenses were seriously tested, but Royal Navy capital ships had been sunk or withdrawn before Japanese forces even reached Singapore. The Atlantic Wall represented Nazi Germany's response to growing Allied naval superiority and the inevitable prospect of amphibious invasion of occupied Europe. Initiated by Führer Directive No. 40, issued March 23, 1942. This fortification system eventually stretched from Norway's North Cape to the Spanish frontier, approximately 5,000 kilometers of coastline. Construction consumed unprecedented material quantities. Declassified German logistics records indicate approximately 11 million tons of concrete and 1 million tons of steel reinforcement were incorporated into Atlantic Wall fortifications between 1942 and 1944. Peak construction periods employed over 250,000 workers, including forced labor from occupied territories. Organization Todd, the Reich's construction organization, supervised engineering and material allocation. The fortification system followed standardized design principles documented in Regelbau plans, standardized construction templates for different defensive structure types. Regelbau designs specified dimensions, reinforcement, armament, and garrison requirements for each structure category. Standardization simplified construction by allowing prefabrication of components and reducing specialized engineering requirements for individual positions. Along the French coast, approximately 10,000 permanent concrete structures were completed by June 1944. These included artillery casemates, personnel bunkers, observation posts, command centers, ammunition magazines, and troop accommodations. Wall thickness ranged from 2 to 3.5 meters, depending on structure, type, and expected threat. Thicker walls protected artillery positions expected to receive counter-battery fire, while infantry bunkers received lighter protection. Artillery constituted the fortification system's primary combat capability. Wehrmacht records document 343 coastal artillery batteries along the Atlantic Wall, mounting approximately 1,400 guns ranging from 75 mm to 406 mm caliber. The largest weapons were former naval guns, including pieces removed from French battleships captured in 1940. These weapons could engage targets at ranges up to 40 kilometers, covering approach routes to major ports and likely invasion beaches. Artillery fire control varied widely. Major batteries employed optical rangefinders, mechanical calculators, and radar systems to compute firing solutions. Lesser batteries relied on visual observation and simplified calculation methods. Some batteries coordinated fire through centralized command posts. Others operated independently. Ammunition storage, protected in underground magazines, ranged from several hundred to several thousand rounds per battery. Field Marshal Irwin Rommel assumed command of Atlantic Wall defensive preparations in late 1943. Rommel implemented significant improvements based on North African combat experience. These enhancements included extensive obstacle belts extending from high water marks inland, Belgian gates, steel frames designed to destroy landing craft were positioned at tidal zones, Czech hedgehogs, welded steel, obstacles blocked, vehicle approaches, wooden stakes, wire entanglements, and mines created layered defensive zones. Rommel personally ordered millions of additional mines emplaced along likely invasion beaches. Rommel's asparagus wooden posts installed in open fields to prevent glider landings were erected throughout Normandy. Flooding of low-lying areas behind beaches created barriers, channeling attackers into killing zones. Some areas were deliberately flooded months before D-Day. Drowning fields that could otherwise support airborne operations. Tactical organization grouped individual positions into wider Stanzenster resistance nests, mutually supporting clusters of bunkers, trenches, and obstacles. These clusters typically held 50 to 150 personnel with organic weapons, including mortars, machine guns, and anti-tank guns. Larger concentrations, designated Stützpunkt, strongpoints, controlled key terrain features, or defended major facilities. The system aimed to create overlapping defensive zones, where penetrating one position exposed attackers to fire from adjacent positions. Despite elaborate construction, the Atlantic Wall possessed significant vulnerabilities. Naval bombardment could destroy or suppress fortifications through sustained fire. Allied naval superiority meant German coastal batteries faced overwhelming firepower when Allied invasion forces approached. At Normandy, on June 6, 1944, Allied naval forces included 7 battleships, 23 cruisers, and numerous destroyers that delivered devastating preparatory bombardment. Aerial bombardment also proved effective. Strategic bombing raids damaged communications networks, destroyed ammunition stockpiles, and disrupted transportation systems supporting coastal defenses. Tactical airstrikes on D-Day suppressed defensive positions during critical landing phases. The fortification system's most critical weakness was uneven strength distribution. German commanders disagreed about likely invasion locations. Some, including Rommel, believed Normandy was the probable target. Others, including Hitler, expected landings at Pas-de-Calais, narrowest English Channel crossing. Fortification resources were distributed across hundreds of kilometers, diluting strength at the actual invasion site. At Normandy, German coastal defenses inflicted significant Allied casualties, approximately 10,000 casualties on D-Day alone, with 2,500 killed. However, they failed to prevent Allied landings or destroy beachheads before reinforcements arrived. Within 24 hours, Allied forces had established footholds on all 5 invasion beaches. By June 7, 1944, more than 150,000 Allied troops were ashore, and the Atlantic Wall had been irrevocably breached. The Atlantic Wall's strategic assessment must balance tactical effectiveness against resource consumption. The system delayed Allied invasion until June 1944, possibly forcing postponement of 1943 invasion plans. Fortifications at Normandy required significant combat power to overcome. Yet the resources consumed 11 million tons of concrete, 1 million tons of steel, hundreds of thousands of workers, billions of Reichsmarks represented opportunity costs. Those same resources allocated to mobile reserves, aircraft production, or tank construction might have provided more flexible defensive options. The Siegfried Line, officially designated the West Wall, represented Germany's primary defensive system along its western frontier. Construction commenced in 1936 under Fritz Todd's supervision as part of Germany's rearmament program. The fortification line extended approximately 630 kilometers from Cleve, near the Dutch border south, to Weil am Rhein on the Swiss frontier, protecting the industrialized Ruhr region and approaches to the Rhine River. Engineering specifications emphasized standardization and cost efficiency. Unlike the Maginot Line's elaborate underground complexes, the West Wall consisted primarily of smaller fortifications bunkers and pillboxes designed for economy. The most common structure type was the bunker-tip bunker type, or Regelbau standard construction, featuring 1.5-meter thick reinforced concrete walls and camouflaged exteriors. Many bunkers were disguised as civilian structures, houses, barns, or commercial buildings to reduce visibility to aerial reconnaissance. This camouflage proved effective in peacetime but was less useful during combat when firing positions revealed locations. Internal layouts typically provided space for 5 to 12 personnel with machine gun firing positions, ammunition storage, and minimal accommodations. External obstacles complemented concrete fortifications, anti-tank ditches, excavated to depths of approximately 2.5 meters and widths of 4 meters, blocked vehicle approaches, dragon's teeth, pyramid-shaped concrete obstacles arranged in staggered rows created barriers, requiring engineers to clear paths for armor. 3 or more rows of dragon's teeth, offset to prevent straight-line movement, effectively blocked tank advances and forced armor into prepared killing zones. Minefields supplemented passive obstacles. German doctrine called for dense mine belts, 100 mines per kilometer of frontage in sectors where attacks were expected. Actual mine densities varied widely based on available munitions and local commanders' priorities. Some sectors received extensive mining. Others had minimal mine coverage. Total construction between 1936 and 1940 produced approximately 14,800 individual fortifications, according to organization Todd records. This figure includes bunkers of all sizes, from single-room machine gun posts to larger company-sized positions. Artillery positions were less common than in the Maginot Line. The West Wall emphasized infantry defense supported by mobile artillery rather than casemated guns. The fortification system was effectively mothballed after France's defeat in 1940. Garrison forces were reduced, maintenance ceased, and some bunkers were stripped of weapons and equipment for use elsewhere. From 1940 through mid-1944, the West Wall existed primarily on paper as German forces conducted offensive operations in the Soviet Union, Mediterranean, and Atlantic. Reactivation began urgently in August 1944 as Allied forces advanced across France following the Normandy breakout. Approximately 20,000 forced laborers, concentration camp prisoners, foreign workers, and German civilians subject to labor conscription were mobilized to restore positions. Work focused on clearing vegetation that had overgrown fortifications, repairing damaged concrete, restoring firing positions, and emplacing new obstacles. The reactivated West Wall's tactical mission differed from its original defensive purpose. In the 1930s, planners envisioned stopping enemy advances at the frontier. By 1944, German strategy emphasized delay and attrition, buying time for mobile reserves to counterattack rather than holding fixed lines indefinitely. The West Wall's fortifications would force Allied forces into time-consuming reduction operations, while German mobile forces maneuvered for counterstrokes. This mission proved realistic in the Hürtgen forest sector. Between September 1944 and February 1945, American forces fought through heavily fortified positions in dense terrain that negated Allied advantages in armor and air support. The forest's thick vegetation reduced visibility to meters, prevented effective artillery observation, and channeled attacks along predictable routes covered by German defensive fires. First Army suffered approximately 33,000 casualties during Hürtgen forest operations, according to official U.S. Army casualty records. German casualties were also substantial, estimated at 28,000, but the exchange rate favored defenders. In some sectors, German forces achieved casualty exchange ratios exceeding 1 to 10, with individual bunkers requiring multiple assaults before being overcome. The West Wall's effectiveness derived from integrating fortifications with terrain. Pillboxes positioned on reverse slopes received protection from direct fire weapons. Fortifications covering bridges, road junctions, and forest trails created choke points that required frontal assault. Mutual supporting fire meant attacking one position exposed assault forces to fire from adjacent bunkers. American forces developed specialized assault tactics documented in after-action reports. Tank destroyers, or tanks, provided direct fire against bunker embrasures. Infantry approached under covering fire, using smoke for concealment. Engineers emplaced demolitions against bunker walls or doors. Flamethrowers cleared interior spaces after penetration. These tactics were effective but time-consuming, reducing individual bunkers often required hours or days. Compared to other fortification systems, the West Wall demonstrated superior cost-effectiveness. Pre-war construction costs were modest, estimated at 3.5 billion Reichsmarks, according to declassified finance ministry documents, substantially less than the Maginot Line, adjusted for similar coverage. Combat performance was excellent, considering the line's design limitations. The system protected German industrial regions for additional months, delayed Allied advances requiring significant combat power to overcome, and inflicted disproportionate casualties considering defender strength. The Gustav Line represented Wehrmacht defensive doctrine, adapted to Italian terrain following Italy's surrender in September 1943, stretching approximately 160 kilometers from the Tyrrhenian Sea to the Adriatic. This fortification system exploited natural obstacles, mountains, rivers, and narrow valleys to create defensive positions that required minimal new construction while providing maximum combat effectiveness. The line's anchor point was Monte Cassino, a 516-meter elevation crowned by a 6th-century Benedictine monastery. This position dominated the Liri Valley, the primary route from Naples toward Rome, according to German military engineering assessments. Monte Cassino's elevation provided observation over approaches from multiple directions, allowing defensive fires to cover valleys, roads, and river crossings. German engineers reinforced natural defensive positions with field fortifications and limited permanent construction. Converted stone farmhouses became strongpoints, with walls reinforced by sandbags and concrete. Caves were expanded into sheltered positions immune to artillery. Concrete pillboxes covered key approaches. Panther tank turrets removed from damaged or destroyed tanks, were embedded in concrete positions, providing protected 75mm gun positions with excellent optics and armor protection. Weapon systems integrated into defensive positions included machine gun bunkers covering approaches with interlocking fields of fire, MG-42 machine guns with cyclic rates approaching 1,200 rounds per minute, created deadly beaten zones that assault infantry could not cross without heavy casualties. Anti-tank positions employing towed 75mm and 88mm guns, Panzerschreck rocket launchers, and hull-down tank positions. These weapons covered armor approach routes, creating engagement zones where Allied tanks faced concentrated anti-armor fire. Mortar positions positioned on reverse slopes protected from direct fire. 81mm and 120mm mortar provided indirect fire support, dropping high explosive rounds on attacking infantry with accuracy derived from pre-registered firing coordinates. Artillery included divisional guns and corps-level heavy artillery. Fire control personnel positioned on Monte Cassino's heights could observe Allied movements throughout the valley, directing accurate artillery fire against concentrations, assembly areas, and attack formations. The defensive system's depth extended beyond Monte Cassino. Multiple defensive belts stretched across the Liri Valley, each requiring separate assault operations. German doctrine called for mobile defense forward positions would delay attackers while reserves maneuvered to counterattack penetrations. This flexible approach contrasted with rigid position defense, allowing defenders to trade space for time while maintaining force integrity. Allied operations against the Gustav Line commenced in January 1944, the First Battle of Monte Cassino. January 17th, February 11th, 1944, involved primarily American forces attempting to cross the Rapido River and assault German positions. American casualties exceeded 14,000 with minimal territorial gains. German defensive fires destroyed bridging equipment, engaged troops in open river crossings, and stopped attacks before they reached main defensive lines. The Second Battle, February 15th to 18th, 1944, included strategic bombing of Monte Cassino Monastery. On February 15th, 1944, 142 B-17 Flying Fortresses, 47 B-5 Mitchell medium bombers, and 40 B-6 Marauder medium bombers dropped approximately 1,150 tons of bombs on the monastery structure. Post-strike reconnaissance showed the building was destroyed, but rubble provided superior defensive positions compared to intact structures. German Fallschirmjäger paratroopers, elite troops from 1st Parachute Division, occupied the ruins and continued defending. The bombardment achieved no tactical advantage and actually strengthened defensive positions by creating rubble that blocked fields of fire while providing protected fighting positions. The Third Battle, March 15th to 23rd, 1944, involved another massive bombing raid, followed by ground assault. Allied casualties again exceeded gains, with New Zealand and Indian forces suffering particularly heavy losses in close combat through destroyed buildings and rubble fields. The Fourth Battle Operation Diadem, May 11th to 25th, 1944, finally broke the Gustav Line through overwhelming force concentration. Allied forces assembled 14 divisions with massive artillery support for coordinated assault along multiple sectors. Simultaneously, Polish forces finally captured Monte Cassino Monastery on May 18, 1944, after suffering approximately 4,000 casualties in the assault. The Gustav Line's strategic effectiveness was remarkable, considering minimal resource investment. Unlike purpose-built fortifications, requiring years of construction and massive concrete expenditure, the Gustav Line utilized existing terrain and structures with modest engineering enhancements. Yet, it delayed Allied advances for nearly 6 months, required for major offensive operations to breach, and inflicted disproportionate casualties on attacking forces. German defensive strength in the Monte Cassino sector averaged 4 to 6 divisions, approximately 80,000 personnel. Allied forces committed to breaking the line exceeded 200,000 personnel, with overwhelming advantages in artillery, tanks, and air support. Despite numerical and material inferiority, German defenders maintained cohesive resistance until May 1944, demonstrating how terrain advantages and skilled troops could offset quantitative disadvantages. The delay had strategic implications beyond immediate tactical fighting. Rome was not liberated until June 4, 1944, just 2 days before Operation Overlord commenced in Normandy. Had the Gustav Line been broken months earlier, Allied forces might have advanced into northern Italy, threatening southern Germany, or drawing Luftwaffe and Wehrmacht reserves from France before D-Day. The fortifications of Iwo Jima represented the most effective defensive system of World War II, measured by casualties inflicted relative to defenders' strength and resources invested. This small volcanic island, approximately 21 square kilometers, became the deadliest battle in United States Marine Corps history due to defensive preparations that exploited terrain, utilized extensive tunneling, and abandoned traditional Japanese defensive doctrine. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi commanded Iwo Jima's defense. Kuribayashi had served as military attaché in the United States during the 1920s, providing him with insights into American military capabilities and industrial capacity. His defensive plan broke from standard Japanese doctrine, which emphasized beachhead defense and banzai charges. Instead, Kuribayashi created a defense-in-depth system designed to maximize American casualties through sustained attrition. The defensive concept centered on underground fortifications. Iwo Jima's volcanic rock allowed extensive tunneling with natural stability excavations, required minimal structural support. According to post-battle engineering assessments by U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Japanese forces excavated approximately 18 kilometers of tunnels connecting defensive positions, command posts, hospitals, and supply storage. Tunnel systems varied from simple fighting positions connected by short passages to complex multi-level networks. Major tunnel complexes reached 7 levels deep, extending 30 meters below ground surface. These depths provided protection against naval bombardment and aerial bombing, the primary American methods for suppressing island defenses before amphibious assault. The fortification system integrated approximately 800 distinct defensive positions, according to Marine Corps post-battle assessments. These positions included concealed artillery and mortar positions with overhead protection. Weapons would fire from caves or camouflaged bunkers, then withdraw into protected positions before American counter-battery fire arrived. Machine gun positions covering beaches and interior terrain. Firing positions were concealed until American troops moved into engagement zones, then opened devastating fire. Anti-tank positions employing 47mm anti-tank guns and buried tanks used as static gun platforms. These weapons engaged American armor at close range from positions difficult to identify and suppress. Infantry fighting positions connected to the tunnel network. Defenders could move through tunnels to positions behind American advances, attacking from unexpected directions. Command posts deep underground, protected from bombardment, and equipped with communications to surface positions. These facilities allowed Japanese commanders to maintain tactical control throughout the battle despite intense surface combat. Storage facilities holding ammunition, food, water, and medical supplies. Some caves were equipped as hospitals with surgical facilities. Water cisterns collected and stored rainwater, providing sustainable water supply during sustained siege. Kurabayoshi's tactical guidance, documented in orders recovered after the battle, emphasized several principles. No banzai charges, except as last resort. Japanese forces would fight from prepared positions, rather than launching frontal assaults that exposed troops to American firepower. Maximum use of camouflage and concealment. Positions would remain hidden until American forces were within effective engagement range. Inflict 10 American casualties for each Japanese death. This exchange rate would make the invasion so costly that American public opinion might pressure for negotiated settlement rather than invading Japan's home islands. No extraction plan existed. Defenders understood they would fight until no evacuation or surrender was anticipated. The pre-invasion bombardment demonstrated underground fortifications' effectiveness. From December 1944 through February 1945, American naval forces and aircraft delivered approximately 22,000 tons of ordnance on Iwo Jima. Naval gunfire included shells from battleships' 16-inch guns, weapons capable of destroying any surface fortification. Yet, most underground positions survived. Post-battle assessments indicated that less than 10% of fortified positions were destroyed or seriously damaged by pre-invasion bombardment. The American assault commenced February 19, 1945, with 4th and 5th Marine Divisions landing on southeastern beaches. Initial resistance appeared. Light Marines established beachheads and began moving inland. Then Japanese defensive fires opened from concealed positions throughout the island. Artillery, mortar, and machine guns engaged Marines caught in open terrain with devastating effect. First day casualties exceeded 2,400 Marines. The battle continued for 36 days, far longer than American planners anticipated. Every defensive position required individual assault, often with flamethrowers or demolitions. Tunnels allowed Japanese forces to reoccupy positions Marines believed cleared. Some positions were assaulted multiple times before finally being secured. Mount Suribachi, Iwo Jima's 169-meter volcanic cone at the island's southern tip, fell after 4 days of fighting. The iconic flag-raising photograph on February 23, 1945, suggested the battle was nearly complete, but 31 days of brutal combat remained. The northern plateau's fortifications proved even more formidable than Suribachi's positions. Final American casualties totaled 26,821, including 6,821 killed. This represented approximately 1/3 of the assault force, the highest casualty rate in Marine Corps history. Conversely, Japanese casualties totaled approximately 21,000, nearly the entire garrison, as Kurabayashi's orders precluded surrender and fewer than 1,100 Japanese personnel were captured, most too wounded to continue fighting. The casualty exchange ratio, approximately 1.2 to 1 American casualties per Japanese casualty, was unprecedented in Pacific Island fighting. Strategic implications were profound. American planners, extrapolating Iwo Jima casualty rates to potential Japanese home island invasions, calculated that Operation Downfall, the planned invasion of Kyushu and Honshu, might cost over 1 million Allied casualties. These projections influenced decision-making regarding use of atomic weapons against Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The fortifications' cost-effectiveness was exceptional. Construction required minimal external resources, primarily labor and explosives for excavation. Concrete was used sparingly compared to European fortifications. Most defensive positions utilized natural volcanic rock for protection. The primary investment was labor. Japanese garrison forces spent months excavating tunnels and preparing positions. Yet this modest investment created defenses that required overwhelming American advantages in personnel, firepower, and material to overcome. The battle demonstrated that properly engineered underground fortifications, when integrated with terrain and defended by determined troops, could inflict casualties approaching parity despite total American superiority in every conventional military metric.